So we all know TV's dead at this point. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It still kind of exists, but with every other dumbass company having their own streaming service, you can kind of see why. Having endless movies and series readily available at your fingertips is objectively way more convenient than having to wait for a specific time or day to maybe see something you like. Now, this isn't going to be a huge hit piece on streaming because I think it should exist for like accessibility, but even though it's more convenient than TV, there's a lot of things it can never replicate. How channels had extremely different styles and personalities, special events, and not getting randomly logged out of your account every 3 weeks. But I want to focus on one that was like the best way a channel could stand out. Blocks. For the stupids, blocks are a way for channels to schedule a bunch of similar shows or episodes together. Like they all have similar styles, cast, or for the holidays. Stuff like Animation Domination on Fox, where it's 2 hours of new Simpsons, Family Guy, and Universal Basic Guys. What the fuck is this? But you know who had the best blocks, and at least for like the shit we grew up on? Cartoon Network, no question. I know Nick had Teen Nick and Disney Channel had... But let's list off some of CN's as a comparison. Boomerang, the block for old Warner Bros. Cartoons that became its own channel. Toonami, the anime block that introduced tons of Western audiences to anime for almost 30 years. And Adult Swim, the adult programming block that now airs longer than Cartoon Network most days. My point is, these guys know a thing or two about blocks. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about some of these in a video format. And heads up, I just picked these out at random. Some I remember really liking and others that felt like a fever dream. I tried doing lesser known ones, so hopefully some people can be like, wow, I kinda sorta remember that too. I don't know, you may know these, you may not, let's just have fun. I mean, it's like, come on, you knew I was gonna say this one. See and Real was a block from 2009 that acted as Cartoon Network's big foray into the live-action market. This was like their answer to Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, cause shit like iCarly, Victorious, and Zack and Cody were everywhere. But instead of being quirky sitcoms, See and Real just ripped off other existing shows. And if you've been around YouTube or really any orifice of the internet, chances are you've seen at least one person rant about just how conceptually stupid this block was. Because again, these were original live-action shows being made on Cartoon Network. That's just the textbook example of an oxymoron. CN had some live-action shows before this, like Goosebumps and Out of Jimmy's Head, but they were really pushing for this to be like a thing. And the whole time it was on, there wasn't a single new animated series being made. Stuff like Chowder and Flapjack were still around, but, well, I don't think it helped. To be honest. There are hundreds of videos that go into way more detail about why this was the worst thing ever. The only reason I'm talking about it is because 1, it's funny, and 2, to be honest, it is pretty nostalgic. I was like 8 when this came out, and I didn't know I should have been like adamantly opposed to its existence. And because of that, I do have some fond memories of these shows, to varying degrees. Stuff like Destroy, Build, Destroy, and Dude, What Would Happen were guilty pleasures at the very most. It didn't help my dad watched a lot of Mythbusters back then, so I could tell they were taking some notes. But I actually really liked their more dramatic stuff, like Survive This and especially The Othersiders. I remember my brother and I went through a ghost hunting phase and explored abandoned buildings specifically because of this show. I actually watched an episode for this video, and it's still pretty fun, but it does kind of blow. Like Biggest Elephant in the Room, this shit is obviously staged. These are literal teenagers exploring dangerous places, like an abandoned jail and a gold mine. This isn't Scooby-Doo. No parent would ever let them do this. Also, the acting is really bad.
If there's someone here with us, please show us a sign or do something previous that you've done before.
Oh, no way! Did it take it out?
But like I said, people hated this thing right out the gate. Reception was bad, viewership was abysmal, and not even a month in, Cartoon Network cut it back to a single Wednesday night block. Hell, some shows only lasted their 6 contractually obligated episodes. The block ended on May 28th, 2010, not even lasting a full year. Shows like Dude and DBD, I can't tell if that's the initialism for drugs or a card game, would go on till 2011, but aside from a few guilty pleasures, nothing good came from this block. The only reason it existed was for Cartoon Network to chase the trends of its competition, and as a result, it nearly ruined their reputation. Thankfully, that was the same year Adventure Time and Regular Show came out, so they bounced back pretty fast. Bottom line, don't heavily market something that completely contradicts your entire existence. Words to live by. Oh, it's him. Oh, I feel it. Oh, I feel it. Next up, we got MIGUZI. I don't care if that's not how you say it, that's how I say it. This was an afternoon block that started in 2004 with a focus on action shows like Teen Titans and TMNT. It also played a lot of anime too, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, since it replaced Toonami's weekday afternoon slot. This probably pissed off a bunch of weebs back then since they had to find something else to do with their afternoons, but you know. Now, the reason I included this block wasn't because of the shows, but instead its host and kinda sorta story. When MIGUZI started, it would play bumpers in between slots that was about a teenage girl named Erin, who lived in a sunken spaceship with a bunch of alien monster things. This was only like 10 seconds at most, and was just them getting into wacky antics. And to give it credit, I like the concept a lot in theory. I think it's awesome when blocks have fictional hosts like Tom from Toonami. In fact, MIGUZI was made by William Street, the studio that also did Toonami and Adult Swim. The only problem, if it wasn't blatantly obvious from the footage, this shit looked really bad. Now, I understand it's CGI from the early 2000s, and they probably had like a shoestring budget at most, so maybe this was the best they could do. But no, this shit's scary. The jerky movements, weird anatomy, and sometimes monsters will make literal sounds of agony. But if you're able to look past the animation, it's hard, I know, but if you can, these shorts they're alright. Actually, to give it credit, the block does have a little depth to it. So like, there's one point where Erin finds duplicates of 2 robot characters, and from that point forward, they stay on for the rest of the series. It kinda reminds me of when the Goldfish Crackers had an overarching story with their commercials. It took them forever to make the next part, and it was really easy to fall out of, but, you know, at least they made ads exciting. MIGUZI doesn't do anything crazy like that, but I can respect it for the effort. And then halfway through its life, it got a pretty big redesign, not only changing the art style to like a kind of cel-shaded look, but also axing like 2/3 of the cast, including Erin, the main character. They never say why or even acknowledge it. I just think it's really funny these blocks had a little depth to them, and then it was completely thrown out the window. The redesign itself is okay, but it's obvious their budget was even smaller. Like, the monsters aren't even in their spaceship anymore, they're just dancing in front of these JPEG-ass backgrounds. This rebrand didn't last too long either. MIGUZI was stopped airing in May of 2007, lasting a little more than 3 years, which honestly is pretty good for a block. I don't know if that's from the fun characters or the actual shows, but you know, that's up for debate. Overall, MIGUZI is visually dated as hell, but I'm glad it got the chance to exist. Before we move on, I got a quick fun fact. So when the block first started, Cartoon Network had a contest called Make a Monster Piece, where viewers could submit an original monster design for a chance to have it on the block. The winner would end up being a kid named Kyler Spears for his monster called Yoke, which the concept art looks exponentially better than the final product. Well, fast forward a decade and Kyler went on to become a storyboard artist for Cartoon Network, working on shows like We Bare Bears and Clarence, and is even co-directing the sequel to Mutant Mayhem. World's crazy. You guys ever just get a vivid memory of something you barely remember from when you were 6? Anyways, next we got Master Control from 2007. This one wasn't a block necessarily, but instead a weird fighting event that would determine what blocks were shown. So basically, viewers would choose between one of 3 teams: Shadow Mark, the Purple Edgelord, Vikinator, the thing that scared the shit out of me as a kid, and Blastodon. There was also supposed to be 2 other teams, the Scraptors and Squid Squad, but for some reason they were cut last minute. The only evidence I could find of them were these team logos by an artist named Owen the Owen, and this one fighting montage that shows a squid guy bouncing around. To vote, all you had to do was go to Master Control's website and visit a team's page. Then each day the 2 teams with the most votes would fight on the network and the winner's block would play. From Monday to Thursday, it would be a 30-minute block, and then on Friday, it would be a 2-hour block. So if you can imagine, there was a mild incentive to participate. The only issue is there were a lot of issues. First off, voting was super broken. Like I said, all you had to do was go to a team's webpage and they got your vote. You didn't need to play a game or write an essay pledging your allegiance. Nope, you just showed up and it's done. Also, the shows you got to choose from were pretty boring. Most of the time it was Courage, Foster's, Billy and Mandy, Ed, Edd and Eddy. These are great shows, but they were airing all the time on the channel, so nothing made it stand out from any other block. Especially since you couldn't even choose which episodes you wanted to see. It was all predetermined. Having more diversity in the shows would have helped a lot. Like, if one fight would be 90s cartoons versus Toonami, people would base their vote on the block they'd want to see, rather than which fighter looked the coolest. Which, that's another problem too. Shadowmark kicked everyone's ass. It kinda made sense since it was the 2000s and being edgy and mysterious was cool, but like, after the first week, it was no competition. There was even a point where viewers could enter special codes on the fighter's website to give them more votes, and someone on an old message board found a list of each fighter's codes and how many votes they were worth. Here's Blastodon and Vikinators, and then Shadowmarks. And lastly, the fights themselves kinda sucked too. I'm sure they did the best they could with the technology and budget they had, but the last fight between Blastodon and Shadowmark is the funniest thing ever. You don't even see them fight, it's just a bunch of shots of them flying through the air. It ends so abruptly that even the announcer sounds surprised. Unsurprisingly, the block wasn't around for long, lasting like 6 weeks at most. It's a shame because I feel like there was some potential in this. I honestly think if they had the other two fighters from before and each represented a specific programming block, it probably would have been better, I don't know. Oh, but one more thing, I distinctly remember there were these smack talk segments that would play leading up to fights, where viewers recorded themselves on really shitty 240p cameras saying the dumbest playground insults ever. The only evidence I could find are these old message board posts making fun of them. If anyone has footage of these, please send it my way. I'll give you like $30 or something. And finally, we have Har Har Tharsdays. I got a lot to say because this is the one I loved the most as a kid. The block started in March of 2008 and was originally called New Thursday Night, where they play new episodes of CN's biggest shows at the time: Camp Lazlo, Foster's, Chowder, and George of the Jungle, the Sick Day cartoon. But this was around the time Lazlo and Foster's were ending, so they gave up their slots to Flapjack and Total Drama since they were brand new at the time. George's slot was also taken, but it wasn't replaced with another show. It just turned into a wild card. Anytime CN had something they didn't know what to do with, they just put it on that 9:30 p.m. slot, since I'm sure that was most kids' bedtime. Like, this is the slot that played those gross-ass thumb movies. Other times they'd have something on for like 5 weeks and then never again, like that one show Stoked. In fact, this also kind of happened with 16. I actually remember really liking this one as a kid. I thought it was funny, the art style was cool, and I felt more mature watching it since all the characters were teenagers. One thing that annoyed the shit out of me was the episode they premiered the show with. For context, 16 originally started in 2004 on Teletoons, but started airing on Cartoon Network in 2008. But since it premiered in late October, some dumb fuck chose the Halloween special as the introduction. The episode is fine, it just doesn't work as a pilot. All the characters and their relationships are established. We're not seeing them meet for the first time or anything. In fact, I remember watching the premiere and just being like, what is this? It reminded me of how the Clone Wars played episodes out of order for no reason. The holiday specials on here were awesome too. Like, I'll never forget the Halloween they played Goosebumps Night of the Living Dummy 3. That was like one of the few actually scary Goosebumps episodes. That and the one with the mask that made you old. Or the Christmas where Chowder and Flapjack both had half-hour-long specials. If it wasn't obvious, this is the block I have the most memories of. Chowder and Flapjack were two of my favorite shows at the time, and since I was also into Total Drama, Thursday was just the best thing ever in my opinion. Like, no joke, I love this block so much, it made Thursdays feel like an extra special day, like it was the next Friday or something. In fact, Cartoon Network made another block just like it for Friday nights called You Are Here. It had the same slots and runtime, but it played action-oriented shows like Clone Wars, Secret Saturdays, and Alien Force. This one was sick too. I remember it played a lot of Pokemon specials. I didn't even watch the anime a lot growing up, but seeing ads for Rise of Darkrai, Giratina, and the Sky Warrior always got me super pumped. I know this section sounds like one huge nostalgia blind tangent, and yeah, it kind of is, but these blocks had so much variety to them, it blew my mind as a kid. Again, not all of this was good, but I think overall Cartoon Network did a really great job at making these blocks stand out and getting people actually excited for them. Sadly, with a new decade on the horizon, THARSDAYS would come to an end on April 1st, 2010, being replaced with a new bumper called Monday Nights. I remember when this happened, I genuinely felt lost as a kid. Everything I loved was taken from me in an instant. And it's true, Monday Nights basically played the same shows for a bit, but moving from Thursdays to Mondays just kinda sucked in my opinion. Like, watching all these premieres felt way cooler when it wasn't a school night, you know? Part of me wants to believe this was from CN being an absolute failure since both blocks were playing at the same time. Hell, the creator at Chowder, CH Greenblatt, confirmed the show was cancelled by the network since it didn't fit the older demographic they were going after. Whether or not that affected the block as a whole is up for debate, but just like CN Real, THARSDAYS basically ended with the premiere of Adventure Time, metaphorically speaking. So Adventure Time wouldn't officially premiere till April 5th, 2010, but it did release 2 sneak peek mini episodes in March of 2010, during the last 2 weeks of THARSDAYS. It's weird seeing these little transitional periods, cause to me, Chowder and Flapjack feel like a whole different generation to Adventure Time and regular show, despite being like 2 years apart. But then again, that was also the case when the block started, since you had Flapjack and Chowder premiering with Foster's and Camp Laszlo. Either way, THARSDAYS is for the history books. Even though replacing it was for the best since the 2010 rebrand saved Cartoon Network, I still miss it to this day. Here's to the memories. For the memories.
Bring back you.
Well, I think that's enough blocks for one day. I hope you guys enjoyed this nostalgic dive into stuff you have a mild, vague memory of at most. The quality of these definitely varied, but I'll give Cartoon Network props for trying. But sadly, now that TV's on death's doorstep, blocks have become a thing of the past. Obviously, Adult Swim, Boomerang, Toonami, they still exist, but they've been around for years and are basically their own thing now, so calling them blocks doesn't feel right, you know? Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going deep dive to find those damn smack talk segments from Master Control. Again, if anyone's got them lying around, $30 instantly. I'll add you on Steam too. We can play golf with your friends. Offers on for 300 hours and not a second more. But yeah, that's it. See ya.